if you look at anywhere along that coastline of Ghana, you can find castles where enslaved people who were essentially prisoners of war, because there were different rival ethnic groups who were fighting each other. And when they would win that battle, they would take people as essentially indentured servants, indentured laborers to mine gold for them, to clean their house, concubines, etc., etc. The Europeans saw that as an opportunity to exploit this relationship that we've always had, this indentured servitude, indentured laborers, and slavery in Africa. Peace and blessings, family. I think that this is of important significance because it is a closing of a circle that was broken, because Africans, indigenous people had always traded amongst each other and always traveled. Mansu Musa, everybody's familiar with Mansu Musa, but Abukari II had sent 2,000 ships over to America before Columbus had even got there. He was, I think it was Mansu Musa's uncle. And that trade had always happened. We saw that trade had been going on for thousands of years. When you look at Ramesu or Ramesses II, they did a test on his tissue because they had his body, and they found that he had cocaine in his body because of the cocoa leaf that the Bolivians, the Peruvians used to chew. So there's always been this back and forth. But I think the kingdom of Ghana, the empire of Ghana, was essentially for the Europeans. When they arrived, it became this breadbasket, and then they renamed it Gold Coast. So until 1957, it was called the Gold Coast, until Kwame Nkrumah actually took the country back. And during that period of time, while it was the Gold Coast, what had happened was Europeans were taking as much out of Ghana as possible in terms of gold. They had the gold mines that they were basically robbing for many, many years. But before that, when they first were colonizing there, they were robbing people. And a lot of our ancestors came from Ghana. And a lot of people, they had this idea that a lot of people now have this idea, because we want to follow success. They have this idea that people always came from the Americas, but it's like there's a lot of people in North America, in Brazil, in the Caribbean who look like our brothers and sisters from Ghana. They look like our brothers and sisters from Cameroon, from Congo, from Angola, etc., etc. And because there's this idea that what happened in Africa, the enslavement of Africans, the colonization, is something that is not successful. People don't want to look at actually Africa as a place to go and invest. And a lot of people are now trying to pretend like they never came from Africa, or they never had any connection with Africa. And that just doesn't make good business sense, let alone any kind of spiritual sense, because everybody who is educated and everybody who wants to have economic mobility around the world would always trade with equal partners in different spaces. And if you look at anywhere along that coastline of Ghana, you can find castles where enslaved people who were essentially prisoners of war, because there were different rival ethnic groups who were fighting each other. And when they would win that battle, they would take people as essentially indentured servants, indentured laborers to mine gold for them, to clean their house, concubines, etc., etc. The Europeans saw that as an opportunity to exploit this relationship that we've always had, this indentured servitude, indentured laborers, and slavery in Africa. But then Europeans said, hey, we're going to take these people, we're going to take them across the water, and they're never going to come back. And that is how my ancestors were harvesting sugarcane. Your ancestors were harvesting cotton. People in Brazil were harvesting gold, copper, tin, etc. And that was going on for hundreds of years. So the year of return in Ghana was basically an opportunity to reconnect the diaspora with the motherland, because it was 1619, I think, the first 18 enslaved Africans arrived in Jamestown, and then it was 2019 we had this government of Ghana calling for their people to come home. But just to give you some context, there was an empress in Ethiopia called Empress Zeweditu. I think that's how I say her name, Zewditu.
I just read about this.
Who in around 1920 was writing letters to African Americans, Afro Brazilians, Afro Caribbeans, and saying, "Hey, come home to Ethiopia." This was the first time that any African, she was an empress, any African leader had said to the diaspora, "Come back home." That actually inspired Marcus Garvey to create the UNIA, the United Negro Improvement Association. And Marcus Garvey was actually speaking with her back and forth. And Marcus Garvey created this huge community, many chapters, and business, the Black Star Liner, to try and bring Africans home and bring resources from Africa. So Marcus Garvey was actually the inspiration for Kwame Nkrumah to have the Black Star in the flag of Ghana and many other African countries. Marcus Garvey was a Pan-African, he was a Jamaican, and in Rasta, he's hailed as one of the greatest leaders within the community of Rastafari. He was one of the first Pan-Africans. And where you have Kwame Nkrumah now, who's inspired by Marcus Garvey, and then in 1957 leads a revolution to decolonize Ghana. Ghana was the first country in Africa to decolonize. Little Ghana at the time was way smaller than it is now. Was the first to fight and say no more, and we're kicking Europeans out. And now we're in an amazing space where people are starting to want to come home, and they're starting to want to see where they're from. In 2019, I had the pleasure of being part of a delegation to bring the Prime Minister of Barbados to Ghana, and we brought the bones and some remains of ancestors from Barbados and buried them, because I was born in Barbados, and buried them back in Ghana. And at the same time, we created a bilateral trade agreement between Barbados and Ghana, but this should exist for all African countries and all of its diaspora. And so now I think we're in a position where if we want people to come home, not only do we have to invite them, but we also have to provide them with homes. We have to provide them with economic opportunity. We have to provide them with legality and citizenship. And actually next week, I'm part of a citizenship, which I'm very proud of, because being born in Barbados and having family from Barbados and Jamaica, now I actually get to go home, because when our ancestors were being stolen and being taken across the ocean, they weren't trying to be American. They weren't trying to be Brazilian. They weren't trying to be Jamaican. They were trying to get back home. And so now we can truly say that we are our ancestors' wildest dreams, because
we are our ancestors' wildest dreams. Folks, what he said was, not only because we know this, we've been invited, the year of return and beyond, economic opportunity, legal coverage. I've been saying this for 4 years, folks. Legalities. We need infrastructure when it comes to implementing just a legal system, folks. So we know this, but it's time, because we have an opportunity to come back. And like I said earlier, it's all about who you know. And that's why I'm excited for what they're doing. I'm not endorsing it. I have no affiliation. But if this existed 4 years ago when I started my journey, this was exactly what I was looking for. Just a connection to get things done. Coverage. Okay. And I love what he's saying, because we are in a time and space that we have never been before as the African descendants. Literally never. I've heard us being called the hybrid African, the new African. Folks, this is such a good in a good time. Okay, I'm gonna continue on. We're almost done with this section.
Now our ancestors have called us forward, and our family in Ghana has called us forward, and now we can move home, we can get passports, we can get houses, and we can finally not have to deal with any of the other problems that are existing in the West. So I hope I've provided some context, but I feel like now is the perfect time. Ghana is the perfect place. We have the opportunities that God has provided for us, and the government has provided for us, and our own entrepreneurial tenacity has provided for us. So now it's just time to put that bridge back together and live.
The bridge, folks, the bridge, the emotional, cultural, and educational bridge. And here's a little hole that I saw in this. And they're probably not going to talk about it because they're selling us, okay? So they're not going to get too deep in it. But one of the bridges that needs to be gapped is equality, right? Equality for genders, really, females, okay? So as you can see, this team is it's all men, right? And as they speak, I love what they're talking about, but the little hole is, yes, Ghana invited us back. Yes, they provided opportunities for citizenship, okay? But on a micro level, patriarchy. And I'll always talk about this because you guys know that's part of my story. So I see that when it comes to the gap, so when people talk to us and stuff and they're trying to sell us, it's great. But that's why you need to go there and fill it out and see if it's for you. But like he said, opportunity is there for sure.
Join our free newsletter for land updates, group trips, and international real estate connections. Link in the description box. Now available, ebooks and e-workbooks to mentally and emotionally prepare you to visit, repatriate, or buy land in the motherland. And the authentic handmade kente cloth I got from Kumasi, Ghana is now a home decor line made by yours truly. Get a piece of the motherland until you can visit yourself. Click the link in the description box to visit my store.